Welcome to this training session brought to you by the Society of American Archivists, Archivists of Religious Collections section. My name is Charlene Martin. Before we begin, a quick acknowledgement. We live and work on the traditional lands of many Indigenous nations. We know that Indigenous peoples have suffered from historical and ongoing injustices and understand as an archival organization that we must work towards sharing historical truths and renew respectful relationships with Indigenous communities. We respect the long-standing relationship that Indigenous nations have to this land as the original caretakers. We are grateful for their stewardship and protection of the water and earth. We pay our respects to elders, past and present. Today's topic is Archival Description for Beginners, known in the USA as DACS. Before I introduce our presenter, let's review the disclaimer. The content in these presentations is for information only and is not legal advice. Our views do not represent the organizations where we work. We do not make any endorsements or guarantees. We are not liable for any loss or damage caused by your use of the content we provide. It is your responsibility to critically evaluate the content provided in the presentation or any accompanying materials. Also, remember the points shown here. Please mute your microphone and turn off your video. You can click on the closed captioning button to get closed captioning under the More button. There will be a question period after the presentation concludes. Please use only the Q&A feature under the More option to ask your questions. We will not be monitoring the chat. Please be respectful in your interactions. We expect you to follow the SAA Code of Conduct. This session will be recorded. It will be available on your YouTube channel within 2 weeks. We encourage you to join the Society of American Archivists if you are not a member. And now, I would like to introduce our presenter, Nicole Mankezzi. Nicole received a BA in Geography from the University of Memphis, where she concentrated her studies in cartography and history. She completed her MLIS at Long Island University with the Advanced Certificate in Archives and Records Management. She is currently the Digitization and Archives Coordinator for the Long Island Library Resources Council, where she offers educational workshops and provides advice for the processing, housing, and the display of special collections. She also oversees the participation of Long Island Cultural Heritage institutions in the New York Heritage Digital Collections exhibit. And with that, I'm going to let Nicole take over.
Thanks, Charlene. I appreciate it. And thank you, Mary Grace, and the Archivist of Religious Collections section for this opportunity. I'm just going to share my screen now. Just bear with me. Okay, I'm not sure if you're seeing my entire tab or every tab I have on my, it's very strange. Let's try this a little differently.
We're seeing your first slide as if you're running the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, fantastic. This one right here. Okay, great. Okay.
Yes.
Well,
okay.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the confirmation. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to Archival Description for Beginners. As Charlene said, my name is Nicole Mankezzi. I'm the Digitization and Archives Coordinator for the Long Island Library Resources Council. And this is a part of a series of workshops that I've been doing in explaining the individual components of archival management. And today we're talking about description. Describing Archives, a content standard, is a well-known book. It's a guide. It's almost like a manual that we all have access to on the web through the Society of American Archivists, who publish this this book. It is as it says, a content standard, and we'll talk a little bit more about it specifically. But right now, the definition of description, according to DACS, is description is the creation of an accurate representation of the archival material by the process of capturing, collating, analyzing, and organizing information that serves to identify archival material and to explain the context and record systems that produces it, as well as the results of these processes. So what does that mean? Typically, when we say the word description, people think about the actual physical act or the act of intellectual act of describing an object as it is. So, for example, this is a picture. It is the village president, George Hedden, presents flag to the Lynbrook Home Defense Corps. Captain Philip Stotterman with back to camera. Village president George Hedden is to the right. They are on the pipeline, which is now Sunrise Highway, 1917. This is here on Long Island. And this is courtesy of the Historical Society of East Rockaway and Lynbrook. So that's a good description of this picture. But that's not what we're talking about when we're talking about archival description as a process and as a means to letting your community and other researchers outside of your organization understand what it is that you have in your collection. Describing collections in this way, it indicates having administrative control and intellectual control. And by administrative control, what we mean is where the materials are, meaning essentially they are housed here in my organization, where they came from, where were they donated by, whom they were donated by, or by whom they were, how they came to your repository, your organization, and where they are physically located, the local location in your organization. And by intellectual control, we're talking about things like who created the records or the materials, what dates, date range are the materials, and how, most importantly, how they are arranged by series, subseries, group, folder, or by item. So we're all, anyone who's worked in archives has probably seen some sort of diagram similar to this. This is our hierarchy, our levels of arrangement. So in my previous workshops, we've gone through arranging materials, and this is, a part of that process. Description that we're talking about today will outline how you have arranged a collection, and it will outline the context between these different groups and their series. So the hierarchy here, we have our repository. Repositories have multiple collections. Within those collections, you may have several groups, just a handful of groups. Within those groups, you may have 1 to 3 to 5 or even more series. Within those series, we have the folder level, and then obviously within each folder, we have items. Very rarely are things described down to the item level. I think we get into that in a later slide, so we'll just take this as it comes. The way that we mostly find information through from an organization is through the finding aids that the organization creates. So encoded archival description, which you may have heard of or even be familiar with, is essentially a finding aid, but in machine readable format, or makes it essentially accessible on the web. So don't let these words intimidate you. Essentially, it is still a finding aid at heart. So finding aids, according to the Society of American Archivists, is a single document that places materials in context by consolidating information about the collection, such as acquisition and processing, provenance, including administrative history or biographical note, scope of the collection, including size, subject, and media, organization and arrangement, and an inventory of the series and the folders. So the best way to really talk about finding aids is to talk about DACS, but also to show you in a few slides what they look like and how they should be sort of constructed. But first, a word about DACS. So this is what the cover typically looks like. You can find this on the web. SAA has a link on their website. You don't have to be a member of SAA to access it. I double checked that just this morning to make sure I wasn't going to tell you something that wasn't true. But this is a book. It is a content standard that is basically a set of rules so that we're all working with the same playbook in a way that we can describe archives and personal papers, manuscript collections, and other types of collections, so that we're all sort of working from the same format, using, I suppose you could say, the same structure, and it allows us to, when we have questions or doubts about how to enter something into our finding aid, we access this DACS, DACS. Well, I was going to say document, but really it's a book. So we access this to get a handle on those standards, so that we know that we're going in the right direction. So again, this is all about consistency. DACS uses words like elements to describe the different components of a finding aid. So why not use things like components? I don't know, but for whatever reason, DACS uses the term elements. And we can also think of elements when we think about like entering metadata. We use metadata fields, right? So we have like the creator field, and we have the date of original field. Very similar. You can almost kind of think of the elements and fields as being very, very similar, if not kind of the same, because they're really both just offering categories. So DACS defines 25 elements that are useful in creating systems for describing archival materials. These systems can be of any type, ranging from simple paper-based files to complex digital information management systems. Well, you can read the rest of that for yourself. But beneath that in orange is my sort of layperson's term to understanding that paragraph above, which is elements are headings that provide information about materials so that your finding aid is logically organized every time, allowing for consistency. Each element has its own section in DACS that offers examples of how to enter the information, and it is actually much less intimidating as it seems. So when we are talking about description, we are talking about, again, not individually describing an object by the way we view it or however it appears to us. Description is a way to, again, create that context between who owns the collection and how it's arranged. So archival materials can be described at many different levels. Ideally, we have at least a single level description of every collection that is in our repository or our organization. I know that sounds like an impossible task, but if we think about all of these smaller, all these individual collections, if we just have the very basic information, we can later build on that. But this way, even it's a way to kind of get through your backlog without having to describe everything down to the item level. It is probably best described by this just tiny little, oops, excuse me, went back too far. This little graphic here. Smaller collections, right, can maybe be described down to the item level. This is what I write here, but it's not going to be possible for most collections. If somebody brings in a shoebox and it's got 5 letters and 2 postcards and a couple of photographs, well, then yes, that's a very easy collection to describe because it's probably going to just be in one box. You can describe it probably as because there's only maybe 10 or fewer items in that box, then you can describe each to a small degree down to the item level. But if you're with an organization, especially say something like an academic organization where you're getting collections coming from alumni, you're also dealing with like student organizations, and you're collecting for those, in addition to collecting the university's archives. So you've got a number of different collections that are going to be multi-level, have several series, have sub-series, have groups and many folders, and many items. In fact, most of those types of collections really can only get down to a folder level at best. So let's talk about this single level description first. So even if you do have a very large collection, let's just say it's family papers, you can still, at least at minimum, describe it at a single level, which is just really just that collection, basic repository to collection level. So what are the elements that DACS is asking us to come up with for these collections at the single level description level, really? These are the elements here. So there's the reference code element, which is a unique identifier. It's usually a code that is either national, might be local. If you go to the Library of Congress, each of their collections has an actual reference code. So we'll look at an example of that a little later. Then the name and location of the repository element. Well, that's just where you are. Is it a university of, I don't know, or is it I'm the greatest town in the world historical society? It's that simple. Name and location of repository element is just, where are you? Where are you working? The title element is simply the title of the collection, the Jones family papers, what have you. The date element is the range of years that are included in the collection. So if it's something from the 1970s and through the 90s, it would be, date element would be 1970 to 1999. The extent element is where you would describe how large the collection is physically. How many boxes does it take up? How many linear square feet are we talking about? So that's what the extent includes. The name of and also a little bit about, some people like to put in a little bit about if there's other types of archival pieces of the same collection, like in other locations. But we'll have some examples of that in a second. Name of creator element or creators element, if known. So again, this isn't any different from metadata fields like the creator field. Who created this? Is it, the Stuart Jones family, or is it, Thomas Edison, or is it maybe a company, right? It could be, the St. Paul's campus or something like that. So it's whomever created the records that we're talking about. Then we have scope and content element, which is scope and content, what kind of items you have and what kind of how much of what you have and what is the content of what kind of topics are we going to find in this collection. Conditions governing access element. Most of the time we try not to take collections that have a lot of restrictions, but sometimes, you find you get a collection and someone says, hey, I want this to be here, but I don't maybe want this box of correspondence between my grandparents to be available for research until after one of the latter of whichever one passes last passes on. And so that's possible. That's actually probably even reasonable. So access and whether there's any restrictions, usually it just says no restrictions. And that's all that is all about. It's just that simple. Languages and scripts of the material element. Essentially, what language are these collections in? Is it in English? Is it here on Long Island? We get stuff that's French and Dutch. So if that's what you need to include, then include that. And then the right statements for archival description. So are these items in copyright? Are they in the public domain, or who actually is the owner of the collection? So let's look at all of this. This is a little bit kind of a little too academic. So let's actually look at this in a way that's more practical. Okay, so here's an example that I took from the Library of Congress. So here we have title element. I'm going to use my pointer here as a little pointer guide. So we have title element. Sounds really okay, but it's just simple. Title: Adams Family Papers, 1776 to 1948. Date element: the span dates, 1776 to 1948. However, the bulk dates, meaning the bulk of the items in the collection, are from 1794 to 1846. So maybe if I'm a researcher and I'm really trying to find stuff from like that 1776 year, or like really just right before the Revolution, or during the American Revolution, then yeah, okay, maybe they may have a couple of items, but the bulk is 1794. So I can say to myself, well, maybe I shouldn't get my hopes up too high, because these dates are, the bulk of this collection is clearly after the American Revolution. Then there is the reference code element, which in this case, for the Library of Congress, they give every manuscript a specific number. So I guess in a way, it's not entirely unlike an accession number, but it's a specific code. So if you have one, great, you can add it to your reference code. If you do not have one, again, this is, you're trying to do best practices, but if you just don't have the information, then there's no, you're not going to try and make something up just to fill in a blank space. Better to not do it. So the name of creators, the Adams family, which is quite funny. I always want to do a double snap when I hear that, but the creator would be the Adams family. Maybe I would even write this a little bit more about, the John Quincy Adams family. We'll find out more about that in a second. But right now, we're just going to put the Adams family. The extent element, which is how much of this collection exists. So we have 230 items. You may or may not be able to get to that. But the extent is 2 containers, or sometimes the extent is like 0.8 linear feet. So it's whatever is appropriate for your, for this collection. Most elements or extent elements speak of the collection in linear feet. Oops, excuse me. There we go. In linear feet. So, you should all be probably familiar with that if you've been in the archives and field for a little while, at least, even if you are a beginner. The language: collection material is in English. The name and location of repository element. The location is simply Manuscript Division, Library of Congress, Washington, D.C. So as I was saying, it's not nearly as intimidating as it sounds. It makes it a little bit more, it seems a lot more scary than when you start looking at it in the practical way. Scope and content element. So here we have a summary. Chiefly correspondence of John Quincy Adams, dated 1801 to 1846, also includes correspondence and miscellany relating to other family members. Conditions governing access element. We usually fill this in with access and restrictions. The records of the Adams family are open to research. And then here we have the copyright status, which is, this is kind of the basic copyright status. It's about 2 or 3 lines. It's Title 17 of the U.S. Code. I just added it here. I couldn't complete the whole thing. I was going to run out of space, so I just put ... But if you go to the Library of Congress and look at some of their many examples, in fact, I think we'll have a little bit of time to do that. I'll show you what that full statement is. So this is explaining those elements in terms we can all understand. Let's see what this looks like as an example of a finding aid. So this was a finding aid that I did. It's a mock-up of a finding aid. I only took like maybe a handful of items and from Reverend John Townsend's collection and created this finding aid out of it. So it's the Reverend John Townsend collection from the Incredible Historical Society from Incredible, New York, prepared by Nicole Minkese, Collections Manager, May 2020. The collection summary. So this, again, are the part of those elements that, just go back a couple slides, these single level description elements. Okay, so the basic information. Okay, so collection summary, the title, Reverend John Townsend Collection. ID number, here I used the accession number of 2020.13. The creator, Townsend, Reverend John, 1914 to 1981. Extent, 1 archival document box or 0.5 linear feet. The language, collection material in English, repository, Incredible Historical Society, Incredible New York, and the abstract, which is manuscript notes, correspondence, photographs of Reverend John Townsend, including printed typeset, handwritten materials, and some ephemera. So this is kind of just the beginnings of a finding aid. I'm going to move to a little bit more complications. So this is just your absolute basic archival description of a collection. There we go. Now they have something that's called in DACS called the single level description plus. So it's just a little bit more information. So if you can, and if you can pull it together, it's great if you can pull together some administrative and biographical history on the creator of the collection. So they call that the administrative or biographical history element. And then we also have what they call a single, so there's single level optimum, and then there's a single level added value where you can add other relevant elements that if you have that information, you can and should include that information in your finding aid. Access points here basically refers to, it says overview of archival description, but access points are essentially very much like Library of Congress subject headings. So if we're looking for somebody in particular, we would name them if they are dominant in the collection, if the correspondence of John Quincy Adams from that earlier description includes, to his sisters, to his mother Abigail, then we would want to include all of their names in a list in case someone is looking for something specific to Abigail Adams. That's an access point. Maybe the access point might be Revolutionary War, or the access point could be, and maybe John Quincy Adams is talking about their farm in Massachusetts. So it could be farming. We're going to have some examples of that in just a second. Oops, excuse me. Okay. So going back to my example here of Reverend John Townsend's collection, okay, adding these additional elements. So we have our access points, which is another way of also writing selected search terms. So the following terms have been used to index the description of this collection. They are grouped by subject and listed alphabetically. So my subjects are missionaries, and Methodists. Actually, I did not list that alphabetically, did I? So forgive me, I'll have to make that change. But usually they are listed alphabetically. So you can see here that these are subject headings that I would find from easily through the Library of Congress. So these are my access points. I did not necessarily add Reverend John Townsend because he is not famous enough to be a subject through the Library of Congress. So I did not actually add him as a search term. So moving on to biographical and history element. So it's just, what kind of information do I have about the creator? So Reverend John Townsend, born in Hartford, Connecticut, talks about his parents, talks about the churches that he served, talks about his missionary work, and then the year that he died, and that he coordinated mission trips, and evangelistic crusades in Cuba, Africa, and Korea. So that is what is simply meant by the biographical and history element. And then we have administrative information, which really we should have for all of our collections. This is, again, some of that basic, some of the basic things that we can define about our collection. But we should mostly know this actually from just taking this from the accession record, from when we first acquire a collection, and we're first processing it, we're first arranging it, we're first really getting to know this collection. So as you're processing, you're kind of writing this finding aid along with it. The provenance is basically, how it was gifted or how it was brought to the Incredible Historical Society. The process is history. The collection was received in 2020, arranged and described in 2020. Copyright status. So this is a little bit of a variation from that the Library of Congress statement. Access and restrictions. The Reverend John Townsend collection is open to research. That's all you have to write, and especially if that's the truth of it. Preferred citation. This is something, if a researcher wants to cite this work, or anything from the collection, this is how I want them to cite it. I want them to include the container number, the folder number, and then obviously Reverend John Townsend collection, courtesy of the Incredible Historical Society of Incredible New York. Scope and content. There we have a little bit more. It's not the same as the abstract. The abstract is more about the context and of the context of the materials. The scope and content is about a little bit more about the actual physical items. So the collection contains photographs, correspondence, a pocket dictionary, a monograph, and a small crystal vase. So just, again, this is why DACS is there. That's why Describing Archives Content Standards is there for you. It is a guide. And when you have questions or you're unsure about how to formulate some of the answers to these elements and how they apply to your collection as you're describing it, that's what that book is for. It's your guide. There's also the potential to add a container list if possible, where especially if you're dealing with a really small collection, you can, again, really quickly, you can add the container list. It just depends on how far you have gone in the processing of a collection, whether you have stopped at the series level or folder level or item level. Because this is such a small collection, this example, I've gone and listed everything individually. So arrangement of the records, this collection is arranged in original order per donor with the type of material. Container list, it's just a little bit of what is contained really in all the boxes. So container, I have box 1. I have the crystal vase. I have a folder with a monograph in it. I have another folder with a letter in it. I have a third folder with the license of Mary Townsend in it. A folder with some photographs. A fifth folder with a specific photograph of his mission in Cuba, and folder 6, which is that small notebook or hymnal manuscript. And then he has that pocket dictionary as well. But that's in a second, more individual, probably, I think in the way that I done it at the time was basically created a what am I trying to say? A specific box, that was custom box. That's what I'm looking for. A custom box to fit that small pocket dictionary so that it wouldn't get rattled around. And then I actually ended up putting it, I believe, in the same container. But regardless, you can see here through this container list how things have been housed and how they are stored and where you can find individual things. Okay, so I'm going to take a little sip of water and we're going to talk about multi-level description elements, which is a little more complicated. But when it comes to describing these collections in a finding aid or, an encoded archival description, what we're dealing with is basically the same kind of thing. But the wording gets tricky. Again, it's easier to show you, and I will in subsequent slides. So multi-level description elements, where each subsequent level of a multi-level description should include all of the elements used at the higher level, unless the information is the same. This will make sense in a second. And then again, the name of the creators at subsequent levels of a multi-level description, only if the people responsible for the creation or accumulation of the materials at the subsequent levels differs from the higher levels. So what does kind of that mean? When you have a collection that has groups or several groups, and then those groups have series and subseries or folders or many folders, the groups may not be all formed by the same individual, or company or what have you. In fact, this is probably the best example of this is something like a university, where you have different. The overall collection has its name, but then it's the alumni collection, something like that. Okay, so now each group is a different, not alumni. I'm sorry, what I mean to say is a former professor. So each group is the name of a different professor, and then within each professor's bit of this collection. He or she is going to have, maybe they have correspondence, maybe they have, I don't know. It could be their publications. It could be maybe their, I don't know, other things that they were doing around campus, other groups or advisory committees and things like that. So each group would be the professor. You might have several series, again, correspondence or what have you. And then within, say, the correspondence series, you would have a folder or folders that are all the different correspondence to different committees or different people or whomever. So what multi-level description allows, and this sounds a lot more complicated than it is in practice, is it takes how these items are all related to each other and explains it in just a couple of sentences, usually, especially if, again, the group and the series and the folder are all created by one person. And then we have a description of why these groups are separated and how they all form, I guess, under the same collection. Let me read a little bit here, this last sort of layperson's description. Identification of the whole part relationship of each level to at least the next subsequent level, which is say group to series or series to folder, may be done through internal tracking with a particular descriptive system or through an explicit statement of the relationship. So let's give you some examples of this multi-level archival description. This is a pretty good example. I'm using the Long Island Library Resources Council as part of a statewide New York network. And our sister council has spent a great many years working and reworking this repository for archival EADs, and it's called Empire Archival Discovery Cooperative. So what we have are different repositories from all across the state of New York. Some of them are, like, for this example, the Rockefeller Archive Center. In many cases, it's it's universities. But what I want to show you is how this is laid out. We may have to, I'm going to open up to another page in a second. But you can see how there's an overview tab, there's a contents tab. And in this contents tab, you can see, the different series. So we've got a business related material series. We have correspondence. We have financial matters. And then here we have within another series, William O. English material, 1917 to 1926. Notice how all of these have just a little bit of a description underneath of them so that we can understand why all of these guys or all of these different series are under this one John D. Rockefeller senior paper. And here I opened up this one particular series to find all of the different folders that exist. I want to give you an actual in-person view. I just pulled this today. This is what we're going to see here is the collection, several series, several sub-series, and a folder. We may get down to the item level, but let me jump out. This is the collection content. You can see here it says series 1, sub-series, sub-series, sub-series. Then there's series 2, emails, series 3, artist files, series 4, granary books activities. And again, this is a I should get a little more specific about granary books. And actually, we're going to jump out to see this collection in just a second. But we can see here how we have series, then we have sub-series. This little plus mark means that we have 30 more files under that sub-series. And it's just a way of understanding how we have arranged, how one has arranged that collection. It explains the thinking of the archivist. It also empowers anyone looking at this EAD or finding aid to understand what's in the collection and whether or not they want to pursue researching further within that collection. Let's take a jump. Let's jump out because I only have a few more slides after this. So this is what I wanted to jump out. I'm going to share this tab instead. Okay, so you're going to see all my tabs, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. So this is the granary records. Okay, this is from the Columbia University Rare Book and Manuscript Library. Let's read a little bit about the granary book records. Okay, so here we are with our summary. We've got our creator, right? We've got these are all the elements we talked about. Creator, granary books, extent 142.50 linear feet, 106 boxes, 7 scroll boxes, 1 terabyte basically and of digital. Then the language is in English. The preferred citation, remember we talked earlier, just a few slides ago about adding some of this background information. So this is the scope and content element, biographical and historical element, acquisition information element, or acquisition element, processing element. Okay, so papers were processed by Michael Corte in 2013. Arrangement, material is arranged into 9 series. Very helpful to think of ourselves, going back and thinking, okay, if we're mapping this out in our brains, okay, there's 9 series to this collection. Let's see what's in each series. Can have several sub-series or folders, so we're going to find out. And then we move on here to, remember, there's index terms, or those basically the access points. Okay, so in this is a different kind of phrasing, but it's essentially our access point. So these are our subjects and our names that are essentially from primarily Library of Congress subject headings. Might even have, you can even have some geographic terms here as well, if that's a key element in what you feel will be important in not only people discovering your collection, assuming it's online, but also if they are, trying to find collections related to a specific geographic place. Access and use. So here we have our restrictions, right? And our terms of access. And I believe we have the preferred citation again. And then where these items are located. Remember we had said, it's like a location element. And this is nice too. They have added some contact information. So if you do need to find somebody to speak to about this collection. So over here on the left-hand side is the way that this particular website has designed it, so that you can actually break down the series and just get a quick glance. So I can pop open this series actually. All right, here's series 1, and notice how at the top, right, we see the hierarchy. First, we have Columbia University. That's our repository. Granary Book Records, that's our collection. Now we have series 1. Okay, we want to, if I want to see like a sub-series, okay, here's the sub-series. We can also see it here on the left-hand side, series, sub-series. If I open that up, right, these are all of these different. So the series is editorial files for books published by Granary. And then the sub-series is our limited editions. So this looks like, all these different books that are in the file folders. So, I'm sorry, this is the finished broadside. So the advertisement for the book. So let's see what's in. So that's the item, right? This is, in this case, we have correspondence, manuscripts. So this looks like this is kind of down to like the folder level here. Here we have business records, definitely down to the folder level, but not down to the item level. So look at all these different. So this is just within one series. Okay, so it's how we took this massive collection, how it was broken down by the archivist, how it was arranged by, again, series, sub-series, and then really, kind of folder and sub-series and then folder. So as I look up here, I see again, now the sub-series has appeared over here. And then let's go to this bit, this right here, this is John Locke. So here we go now. Repository, collection, series, sub-series, and folder. And then since I want to see what's in this folder, I want to see this finished broadside. I wonder if I click on that, what's going to show me. Okay, that's just the item. So it tells me all these access and use, and it tells me a little bit more about the item. Let's back out of this. let's go back to the main collection. Okay. And here, and let's look at photographs and slides. So we have series 5. Let's see what we have here. Then we have, how about granary book slides? Okay. So it's in container 93. And this is kind of the same information about restrictions and access. But we see here, again, the hierarchy. We see the repository, collection, series, and then folder. So let's see if we find anything else that looks a little, nope, I think that's where it's going to leave us. But one other thing that's brand new to this website are the views. I'm going to switch over to print view here. Okay, looks like you guys can still see that. Okay. And this is brand new. It's still kind of a work in progress. It is not necessarily beautiful in the way that it's styled, but it gets the job done. So this is kind of a PDF, if you will, of that encoded archival description. So, we have, again, all of these different elements that DACS is encouraging us to, again, just create information consistently about each of these collections, whether it's just to a very basic scope and content background creator level, or we can go a little bit further and add, and add more information about access, citations, processing, acquisition, again, and then the content list or kind of container list. You can use these, I guess, interchangeably in the sense, but we can see here in more of an outline form. Series 1. So this is the description that they were talking about. 3 slides back, that made no sense. That's all they're talking about. We need to make a little bit of a description that explains why this is its own series, and why all these subsequent sub-series are fall under it. So that's really all. I mean, it sounds like a lot. It's a lot to kind of it's kind of a lot all at once. But I promise you, the more finding aids that you look through, the more finding aids that you find, you can just even go on a web browser and type in museum or historical society or university finding aid, and hundreds of thousands of examples will pop up because more and more we're putting all of our information online with the help of EAD or EAD XML, I think. But anyway, and so here we are with some final thoughts. But again, going back to the DACS, it's a guide. We want to describe our collections so that they can be found, so that they're discoverable. And that's all there is to it. It's a part of our archival's management life cycle that is born from the way that we have processed and arranged a collection. And it basically just describes that collection so that outsiders can find it. And whether or not you put it on the web or you create a finding aid in, say, like a Word or Google document, and then just even if you make a PDF that is searchable and you put it on your website, at least that's something where people can go and find what finding aids you have on your collections. And then if it's something of interest to their research, they can call and get more information from you, and maybe even create, an appointment to come and visit. This was something that is, I like to add a quote usually about archival work in these programs. And I thought this was apropos. Generally speaking, according to the survey results, archival descriptive work remains concentrated in the archival domain, with archivists creating description as one component of job responsibilities at most institutions. Decisions about appropriate levels of description, standards to be employed, workflows, and other factors related to archival description do not appear to rely on external buy-in or approval in most repositories, implying that institutions view archivists as capable of controlling their own descriptive destinies, and that archival professionals have deployed the skills and expertise to engage in this work, meaning that nobody knows these collections better than the people that are processing them. So you fill in the description levels that are you feel appropriate, and that maybe you can only go to that single item level. Ideally, like I said at the very beginning, we have a little information about all of our collections, and that's something that we are all, I know, trying to strive for. This is obviously describing archives. A content standard was major work cited here, and these are some of the other different journal articles that I have taken from to create this program. We'll take a moment after the fact to look at any questions that come through, but I mostly would like to thank you all for being a great audience. I would like to thank the Archivist of Religious Collections section for inviting me to speak today. If you need to reach out to me, you're welcome to find me at the Long Island Library Resources Council. My email is nmenchise@lilrc.org. And your time, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can say a proper goodbye.
Thank you, Nicole. That was an excellent presentation. A reminder that our next session for our committee will focus on RAD description, which is the Canadian version of DACS, and is scheduled for August 7th at 3 p.m. But that is it for our session today. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlene. Great to see you. Take care.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.